Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Rowell, and I am your host for this next session at KindFest 2023. Anila Dhami is an award-winning presenter and journalist who has worked for some of the UK's biggest media companies for very nearly a decade. Currently, she freelances as a presenter and reporter for ITV News, Channel 5 News, LBC, Capital FM, and Talk TV. Unabashedly confident, calm, and certainly compelling, Anila has adeptly utilised her professional approach to host live debates on hard-hitting topical issues, interview a diverse range of people from all sectors of society, from MPs and experts to A-list celebrities, but most importantly, is gifted with the unique ability to build trust and provide a space for people to share their stories and experiences, whether that be on TV, radio, or online. Anila, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me and for that lovely introduction.
It always feels a bit weird, doesn't it, when someone talks back to you everything that you've achieved, but you clearly have an enormous amount of strings to your bow. But there were two areas in particular that I wanted to take the opportunity to focus on with you today. And that's your confidence coaching for women, but also your role as an ambassador for the period charity Binti. So maybe if we could start with Binti, tell us more about what the charity is, who they are, what their focus is, if you're able.
Yes, so Binti provides menstrual products to girls and women in the UK, India, and Africa, as well as menstrual education. And really, it's about providing the resources when it comes to pads or period products, as well as the information that's required. So we believe that if you understand what's happening to your body, you're more empowered to own your body. And if you're empowered in yourself, in your body, that can release things like shame or stigma around periods and enable a girl, a woman, whoever's menstruating to go out into society and feel powerful and not feel perhaps those kind of stigmas attached around periods like dirty or anything less than what they really are. So that's what we basically do.
It's something that we kind of take for granted, isn't it, in like a westernized society? But I remember being at service stations and seeing similar kind of adverts. Like, imagine if you're displaced in some way, or you're a refugee, or you don't have the funds or affordability for menstrual products. That is almost takes away an element of dignity as well, doesn't it? It's just, but also it's something that's not freely spoken about because it's almost like it's not a palatable subject for most people.
Absolutely. And when you think about the fact that more than half of society menstruates and how far we yet have to go when it comes to breaking down those barriers, having those conversations, and showing that actually it's a form of empowerment because it's something that's happening to our bodies, but it's something that we can fully embrace. That's the point we want to get to, where girls, women, people who menstruate do feel that they have that dignity there. And some of the stories that I've heard over the years with working with Binti, there are girls in India who are sometimes forced to sleep out in the fields when they're menstruating because the families think that it's dirty to have somebody in the house who is bleeding. And that provokes all kinds of issues in terms of hygiene, safety, sanitation. And so there are so many layers to it. It's not just the conversations, that's the starting point, but it's also what's really happening on the ground to these people who don't have the resources or don't have the education and knowledge to believe that actually this is normal, this is fine, and we are part of society, and periods are a big part of society too, and it makes us who we are.
And like you say, it's normalizing it as well, because any young woman being made to sleep in a field is just, that's insane. But also I've seen audience feedback when adverts now are a lot more like, oh, this woman can do anything, she's on her period, and then they won't necessarily show blood, but they'll show some kind of liquid being poured onto a pad to show how effective it is. And I vividly remember, this was fairly recently, someone wrote in, I'm not sure if it was ITN or my previous role at BBC, but please don't show this while I'm eating my dinner. I do not want to see this. And it's like, but okay, so when is a good time then to kind of provide this kind of awareness and normalization of, like you say, something that over half the population lives with on a monthly basis?
And it is exactly that. It's about normalizing periods because they need to be part of our conversation, our everyday life. I remember when Binti approached me to become their ambassador. It's nearly coming up to 10 years with Binti as well. And I thought, why do we need a period charity? I actually had no idea what the need for it was until I then went home and I was sitting with my family, some of the girls, and I said, oh, you know, what do you guys think? This period charity's approached me. Apparently it's a thing, but I don't know if there's much use for it. I don't know how useful I could be. And one by one, each woman shared their story about their period horrors and how they didn't know what was happening to their body. They didn't know how to use a pad. They thought they were dying. They thought it, you know, these were horrendous stories all there in one room. And that immediately after that conversation, I said, I'm becoming ambassador of this charity. I can't believe that there are women in this room whose stories I've never heard, who I've been brought up with. I had no idea they went through this. And I thought, if that's happening here in my home, imagine what is happening in society with people from all walks of life. And so then, you know, and it is about creating that change in the home first. That is always the first thing, that if you want to create any kind of change in society, you have to be able to do it in your home. And I'd never spoken about periods before in front of my dad, my granddad, and now it's an open conversation. And I'll talk about pads, I'll talk about being on my period, I'll talk about how I'm feeling during that time. And I'll talk about it with people who come into our house who maybe have never talked about it before. And it's that change that you have to be able to create on your doorstep before you can go out. And I have gone out into the streets and asked parents, do you talk to your son about periods? And actually, and I've done that just at London South Bank, walking down the street when we've been campaigning. And the response has always been amazing. And I think parents are having more and more conversations with their children, not just girls, but also involving boys, and understanding that everyone needs to be involved in creating that change, not just half of society.
Absolutely, and that's a really powerful message to send out. And the mantra and work ethic of Binti is availability, affordability, and awareness. And you're clearly doing great work on the awareness side. But even just you talking there about recollections amongst your own friends and family, and even people on the street, it's just carrying on having these quite simple conversations sometimes, isn't it? Because I remember there was a heat wave not so long ago and it was really humid and I was on my period and I was like, I'm really suffering here. And it was the first time that I'd felt really bad about it. I remember talking to my partner, and he's a little bit like reserved, and he was quite open to it because we have a daughter and it's very much something that she's going to have to be aware of as well. So it is about just stimulating those conversations, making it like a, you know, a dinner table chat, that kind of thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I gave a talk recently at the London Fire Brigades Union, and they were holding a diversity day. And I spoke to them, and there were so many powerful conversations that I had one-to-one, as well as the talk that I gave. And that was one of the conversations, because one of the parents, a man, said to me, I don't know whether I should talk about it with my daughter because it's something that she has with her mother. And I said, well, it would be nice for you to sit around the dinner table, make it a completely normal conversation, acknowledge that they have their thing, but that you'd also like to be involved and you're also there to help if she ever needs it. I said, imagine if her mum's out and she needs pads, she's just started her period, she doesn't have any of the resources, and she'll be able to come to you and say, Dad, will you go and get me some pads? And that is such a huge relief for anybody to know that they've got somebody who can help them. And that shifted that conversation for him. That shifted everything, because he said, you know, I can actually have this conversation now with my daughter and be involved. Yeah. And I said to him, imagine the legacy that will leave for her, knowing that her dad's opened up the door for her. She'll then maybe go on to find a partner who is as open, or she'll be as open with him. And it just creates those normalizing legacies between, you may start at your family unit, but it filters down into how somebody grows up and then builds their own relationships.
100%. My dad bought me my first sanitary towels, and I obviously not at the time, I was like, oh, okay, this is all freaking me out. But now in retrospect, I'm so in admiration of him for doing that, because he just did it. There was
That's
no
amazing.
There was no weirdness. It was literally just went to the corner shop and bought me some sanitary pads. And I think, like you say, that's a remarkable thing. But again, it shouldn't be remarkable. It should be commonplace.
Yes, yeah, but that is amazing that he did that, because it isn't completely normal right now, but it takes people to make it normal. So that's amazing.
Now, moving on from this, one of the most inspiring things, there are many inspiring things that I find about you, Anila, but is your confidence, because I don't feel like I have it naturally, but it's something that you are, as I was saying in your introduction, quite unabashedly, this is me. And we've spoken before about maybe this is leaning towards your upbringing, because I understand your parents had a market stall and you were out there chatting to people and anyone and everyone. But where does your own confidence come from?
That is a good question. I think that I was really brought up in an environment where we were encouraged to do the best and be the best of who we are. And I think confidence stems from that, in that knowing who you are and providing the best of yourself for others. I mean, duty, service, that's at the core of my values as well. So everything is always entwined with how I'm delivering myself for other people. And I suppose I mean, I did well in school as well. So I think doing well, getting good grades, and knowing that I was always achieving, teachers loved me. So it is all a nurturing environment. And I think because I've always been kind of always trying to achieve, that's probably also built my confidence. It's probably been built in blocks, but because I was always achieving from such a young age, I was always encouraged and always put to the front. From the smallest thing, I'd say, as in, we used to have handwriting competitions, I think, in like my year 6 classes, and my handwriting would always be the best in the class. So my work would always go up on the wall as an example. Those moments create who you are. They build your confidence. I mean, I would have been so young at that point, and to have been an example to the school of this is how to write, your writing style should be. So I think everything is a building block. But because I have always achieved and always been teacher's pet and front to the class and achieving, that's probably helped in building my confidence.
And you now pay it forward, don't you, in confidence coaching other women, which I think is so important. And maybe I'm speaking very much from a personal viewpoint, because I feel like I didn't have too dissimilar educative experience as you, but I got to a point in my career maybe when, again, it wasn't necessarily palatable, particularly for a woman, to be like pushing herself forward and be like, yeah, I can do this. Why do you think I can't? Because there's potentially a fine line, I found, between confidence and arrogance and going too far. And I actually remember making a conscious decision to like dial it back, which I don't think served me in any way, shape or form. So my own experience aside, how do you work with other women now in bringing that out of them?
Just on that note, I suppose, of the confidence and arrogance, I think if you remember who you are and why you're doing something, and if it's always born out of something that's selfless, arrogance doesn't really ever then come into it. Because even when I'm presenting, I'll always touch the floor before I start doing my presenting work, because it's a way of grounding myself, remembering that I'm doing something that's greater than me. It's not about me, it's about the audiences that I'm serving. And it's a small thing that I do, but I do it every time. And so you can be confident without that fear of being arrogant, because you know why you're doing it, and it's never about you. So that's my thing on. I hope I always come across as humble, because I am confident, and you don't ever really want it to cross that line, but I think I always remember why I do things. And in terms of the confidence sessions, so during the pandemic, I wanted to do more for people, and I knew that a lot of people were sitting in their homes, maybe at this point, maybe not even working from home because things were still being set up. And then we had the revolution of Zoom. And so I thought, okay, and I was working throughout the whole of the pandemic, actually. And I was, so busy during the pandemic. And even when I wasn't going into work, I'd be tweeting news lines. But I thought, I want to do more. So then I used to do kind of Sunday Zoom sessions, interviewing artists or celebrities, to bring some kind of joy and entertainment to people's lives while they're sitting at home, bringing people that they might never be able to see in concert to their homes. So that was one way. And then I sat there and I thought, I really want to do even more. And my family said, why don't you tell people how to be confident when they're speaking, because you're so confident? And I said, I don't think there's a process to that. I'm just confident. Yeah, I was like, oh no, that just comes. I couldn't put that down in any words. And my sister said, my sister's a therapist, a CBT therapist, and she said, I bet if you sat there for about an hour, you'd be able to write down an entire process that you go through that you don't even realize that you do. And I was like, oh, I doubt it. Anyway, I sat there, and I remember this really distinctly because I was sitting on the kitchen table, everyone was in the living room, and they were like, just do it, just sit there for a bit and think about what makes you confident when you go on stage. I was like, okay. So I had pen and paper, and I thought, okay, if I was about to go on stage tomorrow, I would do this, and then I'd do this. And eventually, within that day, I had written all the steps it would take to speak confidently in public. And then I started to break it down more. And then I started to think of fun tasks to demonstrate how would I enable someone else to get to that stage of where I would be at. And so I put together this workshop, and I started delivering those over Zoom, and it is for men and women. And I delivered it to a group as well for the FA, and they've been really successful. And I tell people, I say, I'm not a qualified coach. I tell you what I know, and I teach you from my own experience of what I do. So nothing is guaranteed, but hopefully it helps you. And actually, somebody went on to get a job. I think 2 of the people that I helped with my sessions went and got jobs. Somebody said that they didn't get the job interview, but it went so much better than they'd expected because of the session. Others have just said it's been really helpful in terms of delivering presentations. So they've all individually been really successful. And I feel so fulfilled knowing that somebody's going out in the world and fulfilling their potential and what they're capable of. I just can't think of a better feeling once I've got off of those sessions and they say they feel a change. And most of the time you can see the change over the course of a session. You can see somebody's confidence building more and more. And you can actually, in the last session I did, I saw it like that. I saw the change so quickly, and I said, that point that I've just said has actually hit home there. And when I asked at the end, what was the biggest takeaway? It was that point. And I said, I knew it would have been that. So those sessions, yeah, I love doing them. And it's so amazing to see people's confidence being built.
It's
and
so fulfilling,
what better than to have people being at their best and living their best lives? It just makes a better society.
I couldn't agree more. Enabling people is so uplifting for both you and them, and seeing someone fulfill their potential is just the nicest feeling in the world.
Really.
You're still doing it, aren't you? You're still running
I
those.
am. Yeah.
Where can people go if they want more details on all of that?
They can go on my website, aniladhami.com, and all the details are on there.
Brilliant, cool. I, as always, could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, and I probably do owe you dinner or a drink or both. So, but unfortunately, that is all we've got time for. Anila, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful speaking with you. And thank you to everyone who's helped us to organise KindFest 2023. A remarkable group of volunteers have lovingly created this event for you, and together we call ourselves Team Kind. And you can find out more about us and get involved via the website, which is teamkind.org.uk. But today's festival is packed full of amazing speakers, just like Anila, other artists and musicians. So please do stay tuned, and more brilliant content will be coming your way very shortly.